it's a critical one, actually. And the way that you execute a smart city, you have to be purposeful to include everyone. And there's a lot of conversation on how to do that, including hardware deployment, but also how you use your data. And to back up for a moment, it's critical to connect everyone. And digital connectivity, digital inclusion is a centerpiece of this whole conversation. Studies show that people aren't buying PCs anymore to get connected, it's through their phone. And underserved communities cannot afford data plans. And instead, the Wi-Fi is the way for them to get connected. And so when a city supports that effort, you can have kids doing homework, you can have people finding jobs. And so Seattle has done a study and identified 12 areas in the city in which we can vastly improve connectivity in those neighborhoods. So we can be very strategic on where to deploy that. I also think it is in which how we use our data. There was a great study that the University of Washington did, and they studied bus route efficiency. And they did that with a smart card on buses. And there was an estimation of origin data and final data and transfers. And from that, they could figure out how people are actually using the buses rather than kind of guessing the best route. And at the very end, they themselves admitted, we are excluding everyone who uses cash. And when you do that, you're not doing it in a socially equitable way. And so it's both in where and how you deploy hardware, including Wi-Fi, including your sensors to make your city operate efficiently, but also how you use your data.
And I would tack on to that is even a step before all of that is just knowing where your data is coming from. I think that especially city governments have invested generations of resources into technologies that are collecting data all the time, and they have absolutely no idea how to access that data, how to use it, why it's important to them. And oftentimes it's those collection methodologies and the policies that have gone into that kind of collection that have created bias, that have created a divide in our communities. And if you don't attack it from a policy perspective and think about the way that our programs are thinking about data, collecting data, how we understand whether they're working or not, then when we try to scale up and to use it to influence decision making, or when we try to introduce new technologies like AI or AV, like we heard about in the panel before us, then you're going to exacerbate those divides instead of bringing them closer together. And so a lot of the work that we're doing is what are those foundational practices that have to happen in order for us to be able to actually make decisions in a way and think differently about the future and be more inclusive, bring more people together instead of continue to push those divides.
How do you affect that kind of, some of this issue seems like it's technological, but a lot of it also seems like it's cultural inside these organizations. And how do you kind of attack that kind of culture? We're very forward-thinking people up here, but maybe everybody in the organization isn't. How do you do that, Erie? Or
so I will tell a variety of humbling stories today.
Horror stories are great, by the way.
Oh, I got them. So one thing I didn't mention in my introduction is that I work at Code for America now. Previously, I started a digital team at the state level. I helped start a federal agency, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I was like employee number 50, trying to figure out how like a law becomes a government agency. That was scary. And then I helped launch the United States Digital Service, which is a technical team with engineers that we launched after the failure of healthcare.gov. And one of the things that I'll never forget is when we started, I hired real engineers and used open source software and built great products at the state level, and we were like so proud of this beautiful thing. And then we said, okay, well, we need to do usability testing with real residents. So we went to the local library, we did a bunch of recruitment, we sat down with our first tester. I couldn't wait for him to click on our beautiful buttons and use the incredibly amazing service. And I sat down, and he sat down at the computer, and this is the year of our Lord, 2009, and he does this. And like starts touching the screen. This man has literally never used a computer before. He didn't know what a mouse was. This was before touchscreens were a thing. And it was sort of, it was incredibly useful to right size what inclusivity really looks like and tactically how you get there. So that is when I got the religion. And I think throughout every single place where there are always cultural issues when you're working with people, I'm gonna call my mom out again, who doesn't super believe in the cloud, she's like not sure where the things are going, is when you're trying to get somebody like her to listen to you and to double down and frankly to do extra work to get this right, you have to connect it to who she's actually helping. So at the VA, one of the things that we did is we were trying to fix an application for veterans health care. And we went around and around and around. We had mock-ups, da-da-da-da-da. We were doing all this stuff. So finally, we just sat down, and by we, I mean the incredible team at the digital service at the VA, with a veteran who was struggling with homelessness. Again, he was about my age. He hadn't seen a doctor in so long that he had lost teeth to the point where he had a speech impediment. And he tried to apply while we watched, and he said along the lines of, "This feels like you're setting it up so I can't enroll." And when you're seeing that, it's not a tech person swooping in and saying, like, this should be a lot prettier. And it's not, this is somebody else's work. Everybody who has seen this video, and this is up, I can tweet it out later, but everybody who's seen this video realizes that what we're fighting for is this veteran. And it's not somebody else's work, it's what we have to figure out together. So to me, like, the tactic is to start with the users, to get in the neighborhoods, to sit down, to bring those colleagues along, and don't make it a scary tech thing. It's a human problem.
And if I could add to that, I think that the culture inside City Hall is the hardest challenge. And Bill Gates recently bought land in Arizona to do a smart city from the ground up, which I think is fantastic, especially as a Seattleite. But what it does is it takes away a lot of the challenges of, you can't just start over in a city. And that culture of people and the motivation of city employees is totally different than the private sector, than any other sector, because their motivation is to, like, just perform their job. Because let's say they innovate and they achieve really good success and they're efficient, and they, for instance, save money. Where does that money go? It goes back to the general fund, generally. So unless we figure out a way to maybe capture that money, some cities have. I know the city of Denver has done some really great things of, if money is saved, they get a portion of it, and or it gets routed back into an innovation fund that can later support financial investments in smart city ideas or even innovation ideas. That is where we also incentivize on top of what Erie is saying. And I think that we have to be really specific to the industry that we're in, which is government, which has different motivations in terms of time and performance.
Yeah, but can I just add something into there? Sorry,
yeah.
Because I think having worked in a lot of different government environments, one of the things that I've found so astounding is that the motivations for people to work in the public sector are actually very altruistic. People have come to the government to make the world a better place. And they come in at the front lines. I was a probation officer. That was my first job in government. And I came in because I wanted to make lives of children better that were having a really hard time. And I came in with a group of colleagues at the front line that also were there for the same reasons. But then in a matter of years, it's the sort of crushing weight of the bureaucracy that comes and sort of like strangles all of that like out of you, right?
The struggle is real.
And like I didn't have much to lose when I was doing it because I was a lawyer and I knew that I had like a pathway out of it. But for the people that were there, like this is going to be my career, I'm going to stay here, they succumb to kind of those pressures. I call it sort of the permafrost of government. And honestly, like honestly, a lot of it, especially as we come out of the sort of recession, starting in 2008, we sort of completely divested in the public sector. So anything that was there, whether it was training for the public sector, academic opportunities, any kind of support that we were giving the public sector completely disappeared as like what was considered to be a fringe, and we underinvested in the capacity of the public sector. So now here we are in 2017, and we're saying like, why aren't they data thinkers? Why aren't they people that like understand why they can use technology to better optimize solutions for themselves? And the reality is that we never sort of invested in their capacity to sort of grow as the private sector invested in their workforce. And so one of the things that I think is so important is we need to figure out ways to reinvest and go to those people that are going to be in government. They're the sort of mid-level managers. We have to make them data thinkers. We have to make them analytical thinkers. And they understand how to deliver services. They understand the dynamics of the public and how to access resources and what a good city looks like. And if we just invest in that sort of culture in a way for training, opportunity, the ability to take risk, I feel like we'll be able to create so many great dividends for people who live in cities. But we really have to acknowledge the fact that these are people who want to do good for the world, and we need to really nourish them in a way that they can produce amazing results.